So, welcome everyone. We are here for another session of Obsidian Office Hours, and today is the start of the official new format, thanks to Thesis, who's actually here in the chat with us. And what we're going to do is we're going to kick it off by looking at some of the new changes that have come to Obsidian as far as the latest updates. And then we'll be moving on to take a look at some of the roundups as far as like highlights in the community that I think are worth mentioning. And then going forward from there, I'm really excited because today we'll be trying the brand new Readwise plugin that's supposed to theoretically sync with Obsidian somehow. So, you know, it'll be exciting to see what happens with that, and we'll see how it goes. So I'll be doing it live, haven't done it before, and we'll see how we get the notes from the Kindle that we do the highlighting and that kind of stuff to sync right down into our Obsidian vault. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here we go, switching scenes. Let's see if this works. Excellent. Oh, interesting. Okay, this is... Oh, wait, I know what I did. Ha ha. Much better. Okay, hopefully I'll remember to cut that out. But no matter. Okay, so we're set up and we're good to go. So let's start out by taking a look at some of the latest updates from Obsidian. So first thing first, let's see, open up the link. All right, so if you didn't, oh, silly me, I wrote like 0.15. What I meant to say was, so there's been a new minor version release, but oh wait, is this, wait, do I have the right, there is more than this, hold up, 0.14, I swear the changelog looked slightly different a second ago. Okay, that said, so basically we got a new minor update for Obsidian. So we've gone to 0.12.15. And some of the changes that I think are particularly worth mentioning in this update is the fact that now with Obsidian, again, funny enough, did they update this recently? Because I swear, okay, I wrote down that I think I had it down at one point. Okay, so the two things that are worth mentioning to me as far as like making changes is, the one is that you can rename links now from the file itself. So to give you an example of what I mean, let me go ahead and open up my sandbox note. And so what we see in here is that when we want to link something, right? Let's say I want to go ahead and link, I'm going to create something called sandbox note 2. Okay? So we have sandbox note 2 over here, and then if sandbox notes wants to reference that, so we want to reference sandbox note, note 2, sorry. Okay. So in the future, when you're in here, you're making this, a lot of times you might want to actually rename the thing that it's named for whatever reason. Maybe there's a typo or whatever. And so what you would normally have to do is you'd have to go ahead and you'd have to open this up. And you have to be like, oh, it's not actually sandbox note 2, it's actually note 20, for example. And then when you would go ahead and update that save, it'll go ahead and update in all the appropriate links. And while not a huge inconvenience, if you think about it, it is a little bit awkward, right? Because what you can't do, for example, is if you come here and you go, oh no, I didn't mean 20, I meant 200, and then you update it here, what it's going to do is going to create an entirely different reference for you as far as like making sure that like, so basically it'll disconnect that relationship that you previously had to the other note. And so what you can do now instead is, so you see here that it's 20. If we want to actually update it to 200, if we right click it, there's going to be a rename. And so this rename option is awesome because now I can go here and I can do 200. And you'll notice that it's updated the link inline, but it's also gone ahead and update all the other relationships that are basically linked to that file, which is awesome. And so I'm actually a little bit curious. Can I rename from here? So if I do like a command. So, okay, renaming is not an option, it looks like. So what would be nice, for example, as far as like a next level enhancement in case the team is ever looking or for a suggestion and that kind of thing, I think the next level piece I would want is to be able to do that using a keyboard command. The requirement of like using a mouse to rename, not a huge deal, but given how friendly Obsidian has been to, I think, keyboard users who are coming in here to make updates and that kind of thing and have all the hotkey commands, I would kind of want something where like there is, you know what, let's just double check though that I'm not saying anything that I don't mean. So if I do rename, yeah, rename is not even a hotkey. Theoretically, I'd want some sort of hotkey that would rename the link that my cursor is under, because the thing is we actually know what link it is. Because right now if I hit Command Enter, what's it? Or I guess Command Click is the thing that moves it. But anyhow, like I feel like it clearly, I vaguely remember it says that programmatically it does know what node it is. But no matter, this is quite cool. And then the other thing you can do is that once you've gone ahead and highlighted certain text, you can actually go ahead and actually search for it directly. So this, I believe, is a new feature. I don't think this used to exist. So if you want to, let's find out everything that references sandbox note, for example, just this snippet, then we can just simply click on search for sandbox note, and that will go ahead and pull that text selection automatically to the search, which I think is great because it's these little DX enhancements that start to open up possibilities for other things in the future. So it might seem like a small thing, but I like this idea that we're starting to get more and more about like whatever is currently in focus for you as a note taker, as a writer, as you're thinking, that can be the thing you jump off to, rather than, for example, being like, let me like copy sandbox note, let me open the search query, let me type that in. Oh wait, I forgot to add a quote around it. Now it's wrapped to the right string. Like you can skip all that by just simply removing all the steps, right clicking, and then just searching for that current, searching for that piece. Okay, so those are the main things as far as like call it new features or like enhancements on the experience. And then, so, if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and in your about, it should have already updated. But as you can see, you can check your current version of Obsidian inside of here under the about section in your settings. And so if you don't have the command for that, for me, it happens to be command comma. But the way you can also get to that is if you go into your file explorer. Oh, you know what? I hit it. If you hover over, so for some of you, this might be actually like open by default, this left-hand bar. And so it's in here that you can actually see like a settings icon. That's what you can click on to get to it. Or frankly, it is not in the top, funnily enough. So, okay, so settings, so inside of settings, about, and this is where you'll find your current version for Obsidian. So if you haven't got on 0.12.15, definitely highly recommend check out. Hey, what's up, Yum? Okay, so now that we talked about 0.15, it's time to look at the Roundup highlights. So for those who weren't here last week, basically Obsidian Roundup is a newsletter that's procured by Eleanor Connick. I'm guessing on her last name pronunciation. Eleanor, I apologize if I pronounce it incorrectly. Happy to fix that going forward if you let me know. But basically, in here, it's a really great newsletter to let you know what's going on in the community. And so don't worry, we're not going to sit here and go through the whole thing. I just want to pull a couple of highlights that I think is basically worth mentioning. And then, of course, if you're interested in reading the whole thing, be sure to go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. And then if you can, please support Eleanor in her work. I know that it's not easy to do these sort of roundup bits. So, see, here, I see this. Look, time-lapse renaming. But for whatever reason, the changelog that I had linked to just doesn't include those things for whatever reason. Okay, so nice to know that I didn't make that up somewhere. I did see this kind of stuff. Okay, so as far as some things that I want to mention that are worth talking about. Okay, actually, let me delete this file for Sandbox. Okay, so as far as Obsidian goes, let's see. All right, so this is, okay, so we have a bunch of news in here, so you can check all that out. But the one here that I wanted to look into is this idea around structural diaries. Because one of the challenges, I think, when it comes to having, like, writing things in Obsidian is I think a lot of us aspire to write stuff, but then it'd be nice to have something that kind of guided us, gave us writing prompts. And I haven't found really a good way to do this yet. So this plugin in particular is of interest, which we're going to take a look at. But I do see here in the chat from Guillaume, there's a question regarding how do I personally sync Obsidian between devices? And so basically, so for those who don't know, so my devices are primarily Apple, but I actually do have an Android phone and I have PCs as well. So as a result, this was kind of tricky in that originally, before they came out with Obsidian Mobile, I did everything through Dropbox. That was kind of the easiest way to keep all of those things in sync. Now that the mobile app is actually out, I had more of an incentive to actually give their Obsidian Sync service a try, because while most people have if you're using, I believe, Android, Google Drive and that kind of stuff automatically works, and you can just kind of hook it up. And in fact, I think even Dropbox works with Android. But iOS, for whatever reason, they seem to have some obstacles in terms of the permissions, so that what you can't do, which what you would theoretically think would be possible, is to just basically tell Obsidian like, hey, point to this Dropbox folder that I like download to my phone, and then that's my vault. So for whatever reason, there are some challenges. And but to be clear though, what other people do for iOS is most people then typically just store it in their iCloud drive. For me, since iCloud is limited to just Apple, that's one of the reasons I chose Dropbox, a little bit more platform agnostic. But more importantly, since I also am a huge fan of Obsidian and happy to support their work, so I do sign up for Obsidian Sync, and that keeps everything talking to each other. And so speaking of Obsidian Sync, to keep this question on topic and actually the thing, they're basically going to be ending the early bird pricing for Obsidian Sync. And so in case, just as a reminder, so if you go to Obsidian and go to pricing up here, you'll see that down here that Sync basically costs $4 a month at this time, and Publish costs $8 a month. And one of the things that you might be thinking of, you're like, oh, $4, if you're kind of more hesitant to pay for this, you have to remember that, at least based on what I see here, and at least I haven't encountered so far, there's not necessarily a size limit on your sync. So it's not like you're paying $4 for like 100 megabytes of space or whatever. Like $4 is just keeping things in sync. Granted, I do think that probably at some point, if we see people like largely using Obsidian to store like large video files and that kind of stuff, I imagine the team may eventually either scale back or offer a higher tier plan for people who need to like store those sort of larger files. But for now, I mean, for $4 a month, honestly, I think that is pretty darn good. And so to continue this discussion, Guillaume has a great question here. The difference between Sync and Publish has to do with basically two different problem sets, entirely separate problem sets. Sync will do exactly what we just talked about, right? Basically, you have your vault, you want to keep it synced to a remote repository that is completely private. You want to make sure no one can hack into it, that kind of thing. For those who don't know, Obsidian being Markdown first, in other words, it's pointing at local files, is very privacy oriented. So for me, I have no reason to really believe that they'd ever basically, I believe that they would take security very seriously, and thus one of the reasons I'm trusting them with the syncing of my data. That said, so the sync, again, keeping your files up to date, and then more importantly, keeping them synced across multiple devices. Very, very helpful for that. That said, what is this other thing called Publish here on the right? So Publish here is about the ability to basically take your Obsidian notes and generate an actual website with it. And so to show you an example of this, here in my Obsidian basically vault, you'll notice that I have this folder called Digital Garden. And so this is a very simple way of doing it. But what I did was, I really don't want all my notes to be public for the world to crawl, because a lot of the times my ideas, they tend to be a little half-baked, and I'm still learning to formulate the words. And so rather than have that obviously go out and have people either misinterpret things or whatnot, then I only want to point them at things that I consider like production ready or ready to share. And so at the time, the easiest thing for me to do was to create a folder and to point to only that folder as a published directory. And so to show you what that comes out with instead, as a result, is I'm going to drop this in the chat, is that you get this sort of like, it's very reminiscent of, I think for those who have used like Foam, even I think Rome is a little bit similar to this. You'll see that there's a bit of like a table of contents that's generated from your Markdown. There's even the graph relationship that's shown in the upper right. And so if I click into, think again, it takes a little bit of this Andy Matuszak style, which is that kind of panel style navigation, where every time you open up a new note, it opens it up in like a new tab. So in this case, like chapter 3, it's now over here. Now, the thing is that there are some things with this that are, I don't know, like leaves a little, like there's a little bit lacking to this. In the sense that, like, for those of us who are capable of building our own sites, and more importantly, especially whether we're using frameworks and that kind of thing, you're a bit like, oh, but I want to customize things, right? Like, I'd like to do different things and do all these interactions. So the thing about this is, if you're not in that realm and sort of just want the ability to just share your notes in a way, this is a wonderful, like, service for helping you do that. And so as you can see, it does all the deployment for you, it keeps everything synced, automatically updates accordingly. Personally, what I would like to see from the team at the end is I'd love for them to at least expose a CMS that I could use to then like if they gave me the base of this almost, right? Like give me a way to render out all the relationships in the graph, like some sort of component. And then from there, honestly, I can take my abilities as a Vue Nuxt developer and just like build all sorts of amazing things. But like, I think that's one of the things that right now that the Obsidian Publish gives you that like you can't necessarily do just with Nuxt and like pointing a folder of markdown files, is because there's all these relationships regarding how things are linked. And unless the server can ingest everything and give you the right API for it, you can end up with things that are missing and in the wrong place. So that to me is a little bit of the challenge. And so one of the reason why I also said that regarding the publishing. So in the past you could, or not even the past, you currently can still just define the folder that you want to publish. But another way you can also do this as well is they've also released a front matter attribute. I believe that's publish true. And that will actually then also allow you to trigger like basically sharing certain things. So that sort of reduces that need for you to have like that folder level sharing hierarchy. So, okay, so what I want to do real quick, let me jot down these two questions because Guillaume is on fire today. All right, so here we go. We covered this. Actually, before the structured diary, let's talk a little bit about this. All right. So we have some questions. And then, actually, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's good enough for me. Okay, so... Okay, thesis here. Let me comment on this too, I think, before moving on to Guillaume's next question. Regarding bandwidth costs, yeah, bandwidth costs can be expensive. So I do wonder how Obsidian Cloud will last going forward from like limiting size, for example, because I think for the most part, if you're just doing markdown files, like most people probably are, they're probably not imposing a huge cost on Obsidian. But as you start to push the limits on things and like you're including videos and you're including photos, like those can start to add up a bit. So it'll be interesting seeing what they do regarding storage size, because I would say that even for me, I even got to the point where I was like, I want the ability to save videos, right? But I want to give those videos context. I want to know who sent me that video, who do I watch that video with, and like what project was it related to. And frankly, file systems in operating systems are terrible at letting you attach metadata. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer to say, oh, well, let me attach this video, like let me drop it in my vault and then sync that up. And then that way my vault can be like, oh yeah, here's my video, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with that. Okay. So I will say that this question here is a good one, and I won't spend too much time on it because I think I can do this well. But I would say if there's one feature that's different between Obsidian and Notion, it's the fact that Obsidian is basically local and privacy first. Because all you're doing is pointing at a local folder of markdown files, and unless you opt to, you never have to sync that anywhere. And so from that, you get this opportunity to do a lot of really interesting things, because from plain markdown and the ability to link things together, you get the ability to create really beautiful graphs like this, right? Because your relationships are able to be crawled and show you in ways that like can really oftentimes stimulate inspiration. I think that's really what it is. Some people are often like, oh, well, how does this make any sense? It's because you take this graph and then you parse it down to the things that are relevant to you, because you're looking for relationships, and you're oftentimes when you're hunting for things, you're trying to see patterns. And I don't know, something about things being represented in like a data visualization way, to me, that there's nothing better for looking for patterns to me than basically that, rather than a list of text files. However, that to be said, Obsidian though is basically a markdown editor at the end of the day, because it doesn't have, at least at this point, a sort of what you see is what you get, so a WYSIWYG editor. So unlike Notion, which allows you very easily to create blocks and this kind of stuff, Obsidian is pretty raw. So in the sense that like, so let's see, if I go back to my office hours, for example, you'll see that everything here is plain markdown. And then when it's rendered and I switch to preview mode, I can see like everything filled out correctly. I can click things to checkbox and do stuff like that. But like, and then it'll update the markdown file accordingly. However, this does mean now you have this sort of split between basically what I would consider like raw text code view versus what's actually being shown. Whereas Notion is always showing you what's being rendered. And that is one of the major differences from like an editor's experience. The other thing that I think is also extremely worth noting, though, is that when it comes to collaboration, Obsidian is not necessarily at this moment designed for that. Because unlike Notion, that makes it really easy for you to just share certain pages or just turn a page into a web page, like an actual URL that people can visit. This, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. It's true to its form, it's local markdown files, which means at best what you could do is you can share a file with someone like via Dropbox, right? Because like let's say you both have a Dropbox account and you share that folder, then theoretically people will get the synced file of it. But then this means that it is up to you now to figure out things like collaboration, making sure you don't accidentally override the other person, that you don't open the file at the same time as the other person. And so things are a little bit trickier in that regard. It's not to say that it can't be done, though. I've read anecdotes of people who, when they work on smaller teams, they can basically get around this, call it dangerous territory of accidentally overriding someone's work. And some people have actually made it work in that way. But when it comes to scale and true collaboration, Notion 100% has Obsidian beat at this point from like a sharing with groups and that kind of thing and permission management and all that sort. And then I guess I actually have a third piece to this. So in terms of the other piece, I think that makes Obsidian also quite different from Notion, however, is that Obsidian has, because it's an Electron app, it has a whole plugin ecosystem that allows you to basically build stuff and customize things for it. So using the API that's underlying and powering Obsidian, as a developer, this is really powerful because it allows us to do things like, so this calendar over here that you see here, this is actually something that someone built using Svelte. And it basically does what it, like this here's an app, right? Think of a web app that you might build, rendering out calendar data. And then it integrates with the API to be like, oh, when I click on a date, like September 10th, it'll actually create a file inside of, the Obsidian Vault using these conditions. So at the end of the day, I would say pick and choose what makes the most sense for you and like the problems you have. For me, notes and ideas are really about this sort of graph relationship thinking. So Obsidian is honestly my go-to when it comes to taking notes and allowing those notes to grow over time. When it comes to collaboration, though, however, I still am going to Notion in that regard. And to be honest, for my own satisfaction, a lot of times I still end up copying some notes into Obsidian to ensure that I have that long-term relationship. Because Notion, it'll go down sometimes, but a local file of markdown files that I have synced to the cloud, like unless I completely lose access to my computer and I have no power, I'll always have my notes available to me. So that's one of the things that makes me feel at least a little bit more comfortable about using Obsidian over Notion when it comes to my personal infrastructure. Okay, so with that said, let's talk a little bit about the, we're talking about, structural diaries. This is the thing that I kind of want to look into. Okay. Oh, I opened it twice already. So with structural diary, what you can see here is that it's going to go ahead and set up questions for you to allow you to start asking things. So we can take a look at this list. Things as far as remembering what happened today, introspection. So in other words, this seems a little bit like a template, but I like this idea of having sort of inspiration from other people's, experience, time efficiency, future, and this sort of stuff. So for me personally, this is pretty neat. I think what I'm going to do, though, to make sure I remember this, is I'm going to come into my, let's see, I don't need this anymore. Don't need that anymore. And then actually I can clean all this up. Excellent. Okay. So for me, the Obsidian random structural diary definitely gets a shout out. So I'm just going to call this an app. And so when I open this, boom, there we go. My base note kicked in, and then everything opened up exactly as I expected. It's already been categorized as type app. And so it's part of the Obsidian app platform. And then that's it. That's all I need to know. And so the reason why this is cool, although I'm going to do app plugin actually. The reason why this is neat is because in the future, if I'm ever looking up things that I want to take a look at, so actually I'm going to call this like status idea. Because one of the things I do is that when I'm looking at Obsidian office hours, I do actually want to try to sometimes get ideas regarding inspiration of different things that I want to do. So in this particular case, we'll see here that, why is it not showing up? Let's see, status, idea, platform. Okay, got it. So in this particular case, I'm still using the hashtag Obsidian platform MD, but I think I need to switch it out over to this, to be honest. And, oh, that's interesting that it doesn't show this piece here. The relationship is there. But anyway, see, these are the things that are a little bit sometimes tricky with Obsidian, because you have to do things at a little bit lower level, which to me is something that could be improved upon. Okay, so that's fine. I have this. I will take care of it later. Cool. So we talked about the structural diary, random listed journal. For those who are interested in journaling, I think that's worth checking out. And actually, this is something we've talked a bit about as well. It looks like Obsidian Tasks had a bit of an update. Oh, this was released 11 days ago, so I'm a little behind. But 1.3 is out. And so I'm really excited because this now allows you to actually sort your results via parameters. And so for those that don't know, Obsidian Tasks is basically a third-party plugin that allows us to do things like, well, I mean, task management. So if I come in here under notes and I say I want to create a task, for example, I can say, oh, I want to publish this episode. I want to do this next Wednesday. And that's it. That's all I want to do. And so what's nice about this is it basically creates that task for you. Although, weirdly enough, next Wednesday. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Now it's scheduled it. So it'll basically take these little markers and stuff and sort them accordingly and then tag them. But what's nice is then you can query against these checklists across Obsidian, which is really nice because checklists and Markdown are very hard to manage, and Obsidian Task tries to help you basically like pull in those little blocks together and sort them in a way that's useful in a dashboard. So basically, I'm really excited the fact that sorting is now actually exists, which is very, very cool. And then let's see, backlinks, mobile tool icons. Okay, that's like the main thing I would say. Nice to know that you can actually sort the query results for your tasks. And then I think that's it actually. That's it. Okay, awesome. And that takes care of the roundup for, I guess, sort of like latest and greatest as far as updates to Obsidian, as well as some highlights that I found interesting myself from Eleanor's Roundup newsletter. So with that, all right, we're doing well on time. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at the new Obsidian Readwise integration. So for those that don't know what Readwise is, it's basically a SaaS product, so software as a service. And what it does is it allows you to import highlights from different services and bring them into one place. And so as you can, so let me go ahead and actually just log in. I think that'll be the easiest to show you. So what you'll notice here is that Readwise can take in multiple sources. So in this case, I have things like my Kindle, Pocket, even Twitter, Medium, Air, and a bunch of other feeds as well, as you can see in here. So if you're using any of these things, there's basically an integration for taking all this stuff and doing something with it. So in my particular case, if I look at and I browse like all the books I have, right? You see here are the books that I currently have inside of my Readwise. And so what's cool about this is you can check out the different articles, the tweets, podcasts, etc. And then from that in here, you'll actually get the ability to look at the different metadata. And so this is basically, in some ways, a glorified sync service, but syncing the stuff you care about. And so, like, you've taken the time to highlight and that kind of stuff, which is quite nice. However, the reason we're here and talking about this today is because these things can be exported, which is what is super exciting. And so you can see here there's a bunch of beta plugins, but the one in particular, which you might have guessed that we're excited to look at, is the Obsidian beta right here. And so we're going to take a look. Let's take a look at this plugin. So let's get started. So let's see. You need to install the official plugin vault. And then once we enable it, we can configure it. And then that'll sync it, trigger a new sync. Will these sync? Can I rename the book in Twitter? Okay, yep. All right, we'll figure that out in a second. So let's start. Let's go ahead and add this in. So inside of community plugins, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and browse. So we're going to look for the Readwise official. Could not pronounce that. All right, installing that. Boom, everything is installed. Excellent. All right. Now that that's installed, let's take a look at the configuration for this. So Readwise should be, oh wait, I need to enable it. So let's go ahead and search for Readwise. Here we go, enabled. Now that it's enabled, we can come down here, Readwise official, and we can connect it, all right? So we've connected it, group files into category folders. Nope. Select files to export. Yeah, let's just not do everything at once, please. Let's start slow. Let's see what happens when, let's go and import the Happiness Advantage. Let's start with that book alone. So if I click on this and click refresh, okay, and then I can export. Nope. Where is it? Custom. Yep. Great. Include content. Highlights in the past week. Okay. Select items to be exported. Yeah, I did that. Now what? We will include this book in your exports. Oh, okay, okay. So now if I do export highlights, I'm going to go ahead. Okay, great. Configure. I did configure it. I just want that one book. Refresh this book in Obsidian. Yes, refresh. Just export again to get a fresh. Oh, got it. Now that I've selected, now that I've configured everything in here, I can initiate a sync. Okay, building, export, saving files done. Customize the base folder. Ah, okay, interesting. So it's actually syncing everything to a specific folder, which I'm okay with this. This is nice because that means I can configure it. Again, that's to me really important. Sync frequency is manual or every. Okay, you can automatic. Sync when it opens. I do like that. Resync deleted files. Okay, let's see what happened here. All right, so we have a Readwise folder as expected. And let's take a look at what I got from this. Wow, okay. So what's cool is that without doing any additional work, it's gone ahead and pulled in things like the book cover. It's also gone ahead and started adding some metadata. And what's neat about this, though, is that, well, this stuff can be customized. Because as many of you probably do know, I have one of the things that I've often I don't know, made fun of is the right word, but like I have a lot of metadata I try to track with my notes because I find it very useful for querying and just organizing my brain. So this metadata is something I'd like to actually update and change. I would like it to actually reflect my book template. So if you actually look, I have a book template here. Oh, this is the wrong thing. What is referencing my book template? Now I have to find that. All right, hang on a sec. We're gonna do resource book. I just need the book template. Come on. Resource book. Okay, so there's something that's referencing this here. Iterate on book template. Okay, now we should be good. So now if I do book template, whoops, delete book template here. All right, excellent. You can see here I have like when I started it and all this stuff, and it'd be nice to actually be more intentional about this particular format. So I wonder, I'm very curious, if I go into Obsidian here and we take a look here, let us customize the formatting option here. And then I see Guillaume making a comment. It would be nice to have image preview on both hover. Oh, in the Markdown editor? You know what though? It might be actually. Am I wrong? Dang, I'm wrong. It's interesting. They had external link. Hang on. I think external link hover was a thing. I think I just never turned it on because Hover and internal link to previous content in editor. So I think someone might have extended on that because I vaguely remember someone else being able to do something like that. For me, honestly, I just wish that it would be, I could edit things in the preview mode because I would like to edit things in this mode where I see everything and it looks really nice. That is one of the things I would like to see changed. But okay. So we're going to use custom formatting here, and whoa, look at this. Okay, so this is good because this means I can start changing things. So for example, I am a big fan of making my markdown files a lot more explicit. So at least title by author is important for, hold up. That is not doing anything. So this one is, that one works. This doesn't do anything. So yeah, it looks like the command hover doesn't work, yeah, unfortunately. It does work for like the notes, it seems, like the internal links, but I don't see it, like external links seems to be a little bit different. All right, so here we go. We have the title by author. I think that's important for making things very clear. Metadata. Okay, what is this metadata bit? All right, example title by Sunk Arens. Get the book. Okay, so highlights header, chapter 1, chapter 2. Highlight text if highlight location URL. So what I'd want to do then, I'm actually curious. Now that we have the author here, what I'd like to do is actually prepend that with the @ symbol. Great, this follows my personal convention. But then, since we're actually syncing this stuff, then I'm going to want to go ahead and open my book template here. And let's see, for the author, I am using creators for now. So that's fine. So I can switch this out. See if this works. Okay, creators looks good. And then full title, fine. Category books. Okay, so this is where I want to test this out. I'm going to actually include a little bit of type here. So this should be type/books. All right, let's see if this works. Let's just stop there. Let's not go too much farther. So now that I have this done, do I need to save? Okay, great. Coming back inside of Obsidian, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Readwise plugin that we had open. Let's go ahead and initiate a sync. And then it said that it already did it, but I am skeptical of that. Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, so let me delete this page again. And then can I do Readwise? Okay, good. Sync data, building, export, saving file, sync completed. Okay, happiness advantage. Here we go. Okay, this is good. Not only is this good, this is amazing because it looks like my type actually worked, which is very, very cool. So here, again, let me bump up this a bit. Full title template, yeah. So my type template worked. And then I should delete those things. Yeah, this is good. This actually did, when the file was created, templater did its thing and ran through it, which is great. So that's that, reading and learning. I'll have to figure out what I want to do regarding tags, URL, okay. And then the highlights. So this is what's interesting though. The highlights doesn't actually tell me the page and that kind of stuff. I wonder if that's a Kindle thing. If new page highlights, else if highlights, new highlights added. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, if this is the case, this is what's interesting to me. Okay, so we have all these highlights here, but what happens if I go ahead and add a new one? So I'm going to go ahead. I have my Kindle right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and then let's go ahead and let me take a look at this. Okay, perfect. I like this quote right here. All right. So I just grabbed a quote from the book that I highlighted that I find pretty inspirational. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go ahead and go inside of my Connect and Sync. I'm going to import highlights. So let's go ahead and sync. So by the way, normally Readwise will actually do a lot of this for you automatically. I'm just manually triggering syncs because I want to make sure things are actually being kicked off. I don't want to wait for like a cron job to be the reason to start that off. Okay, now that I have a new sync, I'm curious now, without doing anything else, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to trigger a Readwise Sync data. Okay, so that's a little interesting. It's saying that the Readwise data is already up to date. I'm a little skeptical. Last exported today. And there we go. What I was hoping for, honestly, wait, YAML front matter. Ooh, that's cool. I do like this. Sync notification. What? Okay, I do like some of these configurations. My only question is, why didn't it... I mean, let's take a look, right? If I take a look at my books, take a look at the happiness advantage, we should see that there is a new quote regarding the typical approach. Oh, it's not even actually in here. So let me make sure. Is this synced? I think this is synced. All right, let me make sure I have the right account, because I used to use a different, not configure reviews, account settings. Not this one either. Import highlights. All right, Kindle, sync now. Okay, yup, flow, drive, great. But it didn't look like it imported more stuff. Oh, come on. If you work hard, this is location, I don't even know. The typical approach. Nope. It's interestingly enough not actually showing that piece. I wonder why it is. Refresh highlights. This book and all its titles will be removed from highlight until they're re-imported on the next sync. Refresh. It will refresh on your next sync. All right, then I'm going to manually trigger a sync to import highlights. Because here's the other thing. I'm actually reading this book over a second time in the new Kindle. So I think it's kind of interesting that they've saved all this stuff. Oh, I think I saw something. Browse, books, happiness advantage. There we go. Okay, so this time there's only 3. Again, a little bit interesting to me, but that's fine. So now if I come in here and I do the sync data now, it's going to do that. And then sync completed. So what happened? Highlights here. Highlights a second time. So it looks like what it did was it reappended a whole thing to it. But I think it's because it's a new instance of it, to be honest. But, oh, I don't... Oh, right. This is replace templates in given file. That didn't trigger because it wasn't actually a new file. That's fine. I'm happy with that. So my problem with this is, where is my 4th quote? So if we go in here, okay, yep, home, and then everything should be synced. All right, in the meantime, as far as questions here we have in the chat, Guillaume says that, yes. So as far as the published site, if customization-wise, you can customize the CSS, that is possible, which does help with some things. But for me, I think if I were to build out like my ideal digital garden, I'd want full control over interactivity. And what I really need from Obsidian is providing me the relationships between nodes. And then from there, I'll basically take it from there. So, okay. So the thing I want to check real quick though, okay, so we know that the happiness advantage has now been reduced down to 3 highlights, which is fine. Like that's actually what I wanted. This is a good indication now. So if I can edit metadata too. I can give it a different category. I can tag it with stuff. Oh, that's giving me ideas. That can allow me to do things like fiction and kind of stuff. But anyways, so I can refresh this book. Oh, interesting. Okay, fine. Refresh on the next sync. Stats. Oh, okay, whatever. Connect exports. Oh, not even export. I want to import. And then sync now. So yeah, so there's 4 highlights in here now. But I'm a little bit sad about this because, okay, so you now see, we actually see the 4 highlights. But what I'm a little sad about is 4 highlights here. All right. If my guess is correct, what will happen when I sync on the Obsidian side is we'll see it like basically append a whole new thing to the bottom. And I was right. Not great. Okay, because okay, so what am I searching for exactly with this? Is that with Obsidian, what I'd like it to do is when Readwise syncs new highlights into it, that it knows to actually just sync like the latest, basically like to almost run a diff and go, you've exported this once, and then I want you to now like go ahead and like append this correctly. So the reason why I at least I believe this is possible is because you'll see that inside of the highlighted section here, they're trying to say that like actually I don't know, maybe Obsidian plugin. Oh, highlights header. Here we go. Look, new highlights added versus else if new highlights. So it must have a way somehow to differentiate. Now whether it's, yeah, it must be, especially because this is designed for Obsidian export. It's gotta be. So for me now, what I'm thinking here is bum 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 bum. Okay, so once again, let me come in here. Da da da. Error of the average. Okay. This is what. Okay, so I have now highlighted a 5th piece from my book. So theoretically, if I'm in Readwise, I see Guillaume in here. So Guillaume, so technically in Obsidian plugins, I want to guess there's a way to expose what's inside. So I actually did build a view plugin for Obsidian. So actually, oh wait, no, hold. Let me practice using Raycast. GitHub search repository view Obsidian. There you go, view Obsidian plugin. So I did find a way to integrate this with Vite and Vue 3 so that you can actually build a Vue app basically inside of the Obsidian ecosystem. However, the thing that I don't have, which I would like, is the ability to access the API via a third party. So Guillaume, since you happen to be on the call, so whether it's like a Vue CLI plugin, right, that says, hey, we're going to point at this local folder or like this local server for like data and then ingest that and then like, I don't know, copy it over, I guess, because you'd have to like send it, right, as JSON or something. I don't know. Ideas. But for me, I know that's a bit of a pipe dream right now because I got so many things that I'm unfortunately like a little bit behind on, honestly. And I'm trying to figure out ways to simplify and start to make progress in a way that's sustainable and meaningful in pandemic times, as burnout is really tough to deal with in this time. But anyhow, so again, let's check to see how we're doing. We're going to browse books. Okay. So happiness advantage still is stuck at 4. Now, what we saw though is that every time I actually did a refresh on the highlights in here, it seemed to like refresh everything. And that to me is honestly overkill. That's not what I want at all. What I'd like to go is like when I'm syncing and I'm going importing highlights, that I could click sync now. And this should go from 4 to 5. That's like what I'm hoping this goes. Back to dashboard. Go to my books. Yeah, it's so weird. Why is it stuck at the 4? Like, this weirds me out a bit. Is it because like it's by day and it's saying that like there's a limit on how much we could pull? This is weird because I'd like it to be as simple as like, because okay, here's the thing. With Obsidian, one of the reasons you bring it into Obsidian is one, you want the ability to reference it, but more importantly, you want the ability to be able to process the ideas. So in other words, for example, let's take this. Inside of here, for example, here, we talk about John Milton. And John Milton, I know, is an author and honestly could be referred in other places. So this is the kind of thing where like, I would just go ahead and create references with these links to say John Milton and Paradise Lost. And then this is a quote. This is cool. So I could also reference Harvard here because Harvard is mentioned. And then, no, that's good enough. And then, yeah, I think human behavior, link that. Okay, so here's the thing. If I've gone and done work to come in here and update all this stuff, what I don't want to do is have to track the stuff that I've already synced before. That to me is the whole point of having the ability to sync this stuff, because otherwise I should just copy and paste every single time. So once again, let's try this. So I'm going to import highlights. Again, I'm going to sync the Kindle. It's so weird to me that this thing is stuck at 4. And then if I go to dashboard, go to books. Yep, nothing. But if I click refresh highlights, you'll see that this book and all its highlights will be removed from your library until they're re-imported on your next resync. Gosh, why? That just seems like so not right to me. So many things I want to like. Because again, Readwise as a whole is a lovely system. Maybe it's a Readwise setting. Account settings. Nope. That's just billing and password. Ooh, toggle dark mode. Yes, I will take dark mode. Oh my gosh, yes, so much better. Review settings. Frequency tuning. So you can tune how often you review things. I mean, that is nice, but let's see. Create custom highlight reviews. All right. I mean, this is a good editing experience. I mean, I don't know what to say beyond this. I mean, all right, so let me go to export highlights. Let's go to configure. Again, we have all this custom formatting that we can do, which is nice. So now if I add do nothing into the export, now if I go ahead and sync the data, what we should get now is we should see a new book inside of our Readwise, do nothing. And then, oh, this is interesting though. It did not respect the new title I have here, page title. Oh, this is page title. How do I change the file title? Can I not change the file title? Oh, that's sad if that's the case. Yeah, I don't see file title as a customization option. That's silly. I mean, not the biggest deal because I probably need to process this anyway, so I could really just grab this and swap it over like that. Fairly straightforward. But, rats. All right, Guillaume, thanks for hanging out. Talk to you later. Oof. All right. Okay, much better. Actually, surprisingly enough, we've gotten pretty lucky with sirens. It hasn't been too bad when I've been streaming the last few times. But, alas. Okay, well, I mean, again, I like the fact that I now can start getting things synced into Obsidian. I'm a little concerned about how I would grab new stuff. That is really what I'm a bit concerned about, because here, once again, I have all this stuff. And again, let me just replace currents in the file. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, all right, I'm giving it some more time, but I have a feeling maybe it's like a daily thing that you can only, can I click this? Refresh this book in Obsidian. Refreshing tells Readwise to resync all the highlights in this book or article the next time you export to Obsidian. Be sure to delete the note in Obsidian, otherwise you'll have a duplicate. If you want to refresh all your content, delete the parent Readwise notebook from Obsidian, then export again. Oh, okay, so that's not even like a resync of this specific book kind of bit. That is very much a like, okay. Oh, so I'm curious actually. I'm going to add now these 2 podcasts that I actually listened to recently. And then by recently, actually, if Gerald's on the stream, credit to Gerald for turning me on to the Acquired podcast, which is absolutely phenomenal as far as their storytelling and research into things. I haven't had a chance to really listen to any recently, but the time I had just learning a lot about the history behind things, I learned so much being able to listen to that. So if you're looking for a new podcast to try out, absolutely recommend checking out Acquired. But actually, so I'm curious. Now that Acquired is synced to this, I could sync the data. It'll build the export, Readwise Sync completed. Looks like Happiness Advantage has stayed the same. Berkshire Hathaway has appeared. Cool. Okay. This is neat. Oh my god. Okay, this is gonna make me use Air, I think, so much more now, because this is cool. So okay. So as far as I guess a product shout out, the Air app. This is this only Get Air? Okay. Unfortunately, only an iOS app, but what I think is worth mentioning here, so let me actually go back to episode 15 for Obsidian Office Hours, drop this in resources. Okay, so the thing I really like about Air is that they make it really easy to basically clip pieces of audio that are basically like you found interesting. So it almost like a little bit of, I also call it machine learning, but I think it's just like, once it understands the transcript of a podcast, it knows that when you're saying like, oh, like mark this as interesting, like I want to bookmark this, it knows to save roughly the last, like, I don't know, call it 5 to 10 seconds, however they somehow demark the importance of things. And so, for example, little things here that talk about, so let's process this real quick together. So here so if you didn't know, Berkshire Hathaway is really about the story behind Warren Buffett. And so in this particular case, he talks about how apparently Berkshire Hathaway, which is like the company that like is very, very well off, and so I think this is why this is an interesting statement, is apparently he claims that purchasing Berkshire Hathaway was the biggest investment mistake he ever made. And the reason this is interesting to people is because it's like, this is the thing that's making so much money, so how could this be a mistake? And so you're probably thinking like, and so later on in the episode, he claims that by purchasing Berkshire Hathaway, because here's the thing, Berkshire Hathaway was not the industry titan that it is today. Like a lot of that is due to the management that Warren as well as others contributed to making it what it is today. But when it was first when he first purchased it, that was a completely different like thing then, right? Basically, and so apparently he claimed that it cost him up to $200 billion in opportunity costs. And so this is particularly interesting to me. And so when I heard this, I was like, this is a really interesting example of this concept of an opportunity cost. Because a lot of us, I think, when we think about evaluating decisions between good, bad, and that kind of thing, it's easy to think about what we get out of the end of the day. So a common example of this is like, okay, if I take this contracting gig for X number of hours, I will get a return of this much money, right? I'll be paid $2,000 to work, for, I don't know, 5 hours, whatever, 10 hours on an app, right, as a developer. And so that is almost like the trade value. But what's interesting about focusing on opportunity cost, which I think it was a really big theme in this particular episode of the Acquired for Berkshire Hathaway, is that while it's easy to see that sort of short-term trade-in value of like, if I give someone 5 hours, I will get $2,000 for coding their app, whatever. There's something to be said about the opportunity cost of that 5 hours you spend on what else you could spend it on. Now, I think one of the reasons this is particularly challenging to evaluate and think about is because oftentimes when we look at opportunity, it seems overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people, and understandably so, because I mean, it's easy to say that the world is your oyster with those 5 hours, but one of the nice things I think we have, like one of the benefits of having a fixed opportunity, like someone offering you $2,000 to build their app, is that the timeline seems very set and you know what you're trying to achieve. But on the other hand, the limitation of being in this sort of mindset of like allowing others to define those constraints and how your time is spent in regards for what else is that it's easy to let opportunity bypass you, because by taking on, for example, this 5-hour project to make $2,000, again, assuming you're the kind of person that doesn't like abandon projects midway through, this means that if in the future, right, let's say that on top of your 9 to 5, by the way, this 5-hour project is on top of your 5-hour, your 9 to 5. So in this case, we are in this scenario that you basically don't have like that much free time. So let's say you have 10 hours of free time outside of your job. So this means 5 hours is now gone. And this means, and let's say for the sake of the argument, let's say this is 5 hours a week for a month, because that's how roughly long they estimate it'll take to build the app. So basically your trade-in, I said what, $2,000 for 5 hours? So let's say, again, 2,000 times 4, that's $8,000. You're going to get $8,000 for building this app. But this means from an opportunity cost perspective, you've now 20 hours of your month is gone. And so what's interesting about this then is that if in the future a more interesting project comes along, and let's say it requires 10 hours of your free time and they want to pay you even more, they want to pay you double, 4,000. Again, short of you just canceling the contract, you basically, assuming you fall by the rules of constraint and you don't try to push yourself to the point of burnout, you're going to find yourself having to turn things down. And I think this is hard because we're talking about sort of predicting the future while also like talking about what's possible. And I don't think there's a right or wrong to this. But personally, as I start to think more about personal growth and development and learning to create impact in our lives that really matter to us rather than merely checking things off of a list, things like opportunity costs, I think, are important to eventually factor into how we make decisions. Because that's really where, when we can make space for new opportunities to come in, that is a really big deal. So for example, another thing that comes up with opportunity cost when I think about it is one of the books I read recently was called, I think it was Quitter. And he talks a lot about the fact that like most people, when they think about their dream job, which might be like quitting my job to create a startup, they think that what I'll do is I'm just going to quit and I'll just do the romantic thing and work work on my app, right? And they give themselves a timeline like, oh, I have 6 months savings and I'm just going to go for it, right? It's very romantic, very adventurous. However, the opportunity cost when we're talking about something like this, though, is quite different, because you now have a 6 months time frame to make something financially viable, okay? Because let's assume that you have people that depend on you and you have bills to pay. Then this does mean that when you quit your job, you are running on a time crunch. And so that 6 months, while you can work on your app, full time, if you, for whatever reason, don't make it by the end of the 6 months, either you're going to need to take a loan out, or you're going to have other stressors that are probably going to impact the result of your app. Maybe you're going to end up taking on investors that you might not have wanted to take on because you're like, well, I'm full-time anyways. I guess I'll take investors to help support me continuously. But then as a result, what? You're giving up ownership. And so there are a lot of these hidden opportunity costs that come along the way. And so what I think is John Acuff, now that I'm remembering the author's name, what he talks about with the idea of opportunity cost is that when you keep your job, even though it's not the sexiest thing, right? Because that you work in your project consistently on the side while, call it, taking less responsibility and maybe even at least being part-time with your job, is that then you can actually open yourself up to other ideas and things without being like, shoot, I need to pay the bills, therefore I need to make these compromises in order for my app to really succeed. And so in his particular case with the Quitter book, his kind of, call it, go-to recommendation typically is like, if you have something like that where you want to quit and do it full-time, like, grind it out, right? Because it's a marathon. It's really easy to, in the office, there's that whole thing, right, about like having that quitting story where you turn your resignation and you go off and live your life. Very romantic. And then the reality sets in because, again, like what we can forecast over the next few months to the next year, tricky to do, especially, think about all that we're going through with pandemic right now. And anyways, so it's funny. And so all of this to say, and this is what I like about being able to think about ideas within Obsidian and having these ideas where, because I listened to a podcast, it introduced me to really think about this term and honestly crystallize opportunity cost to me. Because in case you're wondering, the reason why Warren Buffett claims that the purchase of Berkshire Hathaway cost him $200 billion is not because he like when he purchased it, he didn't make money off of it. But at least with Warren's sort of philosophy regarding compound interest and having that invest over time, basically to Warren, right, because of all the work that needed to be put into Berkshire Hathaway to make it what it was, there were so many other things he theoretically could have put it in that would have grown more profitably over time. And mind you, a lot of things can be said in hindsight, right? Because, for example, like a fun little piece of trivia that I didn't know about until the podcast is that Warren was actually like, I think either a majority shareholder, I think, of Geico, the insurance company, and he sold it off before it really got big. And so I think the panelists were having a lot of fun being like, can you imagine how much richer like Warren would be if he held on to the Geico stock? And there were other things like that where, and so anyways, all this to say, it's easy to look back in hindsight and say those things. But as a result, for those of us trying to look forward and plan, it is important to acknowledge those opportunity costs and what you're trading things for. And definitely something that I often try to think about. So, okay, so cool. Error is syncing in transcript in here as well as the idea. Again, I'm really liking this. This is really great. All right, I'm just going to leave this alone. I can process this on my own time. Okay. So, checking the chat. Okay, so thesis here. We can spend money, we can earn more, we can spend more, but when we spend time, it's gone and we can't get it back. Priorities is the key. Yeah, thesis. I think, honestly, that is one of the problems I've decided to, like, as I'm looking at my own time and thinking about priorities for my own life, I've started to... I think this is the problem I'd like to help tackle to solve for more people, because I do think it's a lot for people to hold in their heads and to make trade-offs. The analogy metaphor I often make with this particular problem is like, if you didn't have the ability to track your finances, right? Let's say you didn't have a banking app and you had to like call someone to get your transactions and all this stuff, and it was very hard to get a view of your financial data. I think people would find it very hard to manage their money, because it's just so much data to be like, how much am I spending? How does this relate to larger goals? How does my larger financial health look? How is my portfolio doing? And then, like, do I need to put more money into it? Like, money already, with all the tools that have been created for money, is still a rather complicated thing to honestly keep track of and make the smartest decisions, right? But all that said, all I'm trying to say is that I think time has a similar issue where it's a valuable resource to be budgeted. And it's funny, I recently read a book called Do Nothing. Actually, that was one of the books that appeared on Readwise that Cassidy that Cassidy had recommended me while I had sort of taken that week off to try to start to, I don't know, shake off a bit of the burnout. And and you know what? Let's see. Do nothing. Let's why am I even let's bring it up. So I see we talk. I think time is money is one of the things. Here we go. Oh, I love it. Okay, so okay. So let me backtrack that. So what just happened here is that I want to talk about this concept of that time is money, very popular one. But more importantly, with time is money. When I was like, oh, there's this book in this book, Do Nothing. I remember this thing they were talking about time is money. And with Obsidian, it was this is very easy to just like jump to my Do Nothing and then like jump down and then but oh, Cassidy, oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for the feedback. I've been tinkering with it a bit, so really appreciate it. Cassidy, you're the best. We look forward to seeing you at your stream later. If you're streaming, actually, I don't know if you are, but anyhow, thanks so much for hanging out. Okay. All right, time is money. This is an interesting concept that I think I would be surprised that if a lot of people, like for those who haven't heard of it, but this is probably one of the biggest, I'm going to call it toxic productivity mantras that exists out there. Because, so here, actually, let's just take a look at the quote that I had highlighted, right? At this point, let me go back a little bit because, okay, in the book Do Nothing, basically, it kind of takes the diametric, or it takes the complete polar opposite idea of do more to do nothing, right? Because do more is like the productivity mantra of like, we can always do more, we can be more efficient, and do nothing is like, wait, I don't think that's right. I think the opposite is true. We should be doing less. Is basically not even doing less. The book is titled Do Nothing. That said, while it does take call it an extreme view of this idea against the sort of typical productivity of do more, it does do an interesting analysis of our history and what things used to be like, right? The kind of work and the kind of obligations we had. And so here, it's kind of interesting actually. No, this back piece doesn't help. She talks about the time where prior to the Industrial Revolution, where things started to be automated, things were basically done as fast as they could be, in the sense that, like, let's say for me, as a craftsman, let's go back before the age of computers. And what I did was I'm a tailor. I make suits by hand and I customize them for the individual. So when you wanted a suit made prior to the Industrial Revolution, what would you do? You would go to the tailor, I would take measurements, and then would go ahead and I would basically like stitch the material together and make it for you. And so as a result, I had an estimate roughly of when that time would be, like, oh, it'll take me like 2 weeks to 3 weeks. But then at the same time, if something came up and like a family member got sick and got delayed, there was not really much for you to do, as far as like, you just kind of had to accept that was the timetable for how products were made. And then as a result, goods had a value associated, like the value of goods were associated based on like the product and less about like how quickly it was done, to an extent, right? Again, I'm generalizing a bit here. But the interesting thing is that when the Industrial Revolution happened, right, basically when we started to automate pieces and allow the machines to take place of what would have been craftsman work, such as like basically producing goods, we ended up transforming really this concept of quantifying our time for money. Because once again, I could roughly, again, let's say it took me 2 to 3 weeks to make a suit. And again, for the sake of easy numbers, I make $500 off one suit. So this means that as a whole, I can make 2 suits a month. And then that would be like $2,000. Oh, wait, I said $500. So I make $1,000 a month. There you go. Simple math. However, with automation now, all of those skills have been transferred right to the machines. And now my skills to help make that happen, the suits are now being produced at a rate far faster than I could do on my own. So now instead of 2 suits a month, we have this like large production of like multiple suits in hours, right? And so what the author in this kind of starts to analyze is that when we made this shift that allowed us to basically quantify how much you got done in an hour, because again, when a tailor wasn't feeling well and couldn't meet the quota, you kind of had to just accept it. But in an age where you're now like, call it responsible for manning a machine that produces 10 units an hour, all of a sudden we had quantified time and made time money. And in a really significant way, because I know that you could technically argue that, well, then if you got faster at making suits, you can make 3 suits a month or whatever. But to a large extent, people, I would say the cadence of life was very different back then, as far as like understanding that waiting for things and things not always happening exactly by a certain time was, I don't know, a bit more of the norm. And so, but with the automation of things now really idle hours really were a waste of money because you weren't generating these things. And so this is what she kind of proposed. I think it's Celeste, right? Yeah. So I think what she proposes here is that when we equated time with money, we felt like we started quantifying time in a way that was honestly quite toxic to our mentality regarding the fact that it's something to be wasted. So in other words, we started being like, well, I could be relaxing and taking time to recover and spend time with myself, or I could freelance myself and I'll make $100 an hour. And so, oh gosh, so that means that like, if I like watch TV for 5 hours, I just lost $500. And I think this is at the root of a lot of, as she kind of proposes, modern day stress. Is that we're always trying to quantify things, and as income inequality and these sort of consumeristic behaviors continue to propagate out in our sort of day to day, this means that, oddly enough, even though we have the technology to do far less than we used to do back then, right? Because think about how long it used to take to do like laundry, right? You actually had to take your clothes to like the river, and you had to like beat them, and then you had to like soak them in the soap, and then you had to like rub them out, make sure the dirt's out, and then you had to make sure you go hang them. Like that was hours and hours of work. And then we took that and we saved all that time with these amazing machines where you toss it in, throw some soap, and within a couple hours and switch it, or not even a couple hours, sometimes within 30 minutes, switch over the load, let it dry for like an hour and a half, all of your laundry is done, right? And we took what might have been a half day, full day process and made that super efficient. But then somehow we took that time that we saved, and rather than being able to enjoy and spend that time with people we care about and doing things that we love, we filled it with even more things to stress us out and to do even more, that kind of thing. So all this to say, which is a long-winded one to talk about this, is that, when we're looking at time priorities, and I think this is kind of the thing that kind of inspired this, is it's really honestly a tough thing. And it's why things like Obsidian, to me, represent more of this idea of an exploration. Because I don't know about y'all, but when I see my graph, there's something really fun about it. There's just like an inherent, it lights up the neurons in my brains, and it makes me excited to go exploring for something beyond the typical, oh, I just want to check something off my list. And I'm hoping, whether it's something I build or something I help to create, I'd love to see more software start to inspire that again, to return us back to our roots regarding creating a life that we ultimately really have, how do I say this? Spending time on things that you really love and creating impact in ways that matter to you, rather than feeling like you're simply on this sort of hedonistic treadmill that you're just running for the sake of running. And then at the end of it, you look back and you go, what was all that for? And I don't know. This is a topic that definitely strikes home, for me quite strongly, because it's hard. In a world where there are almost an infinite number of checkboxes to get. I can't tell you how many courses I've purchased aspirationally because, WebAssembly is the new thing, and then there's Rust, and then what about machine learning, and how will that play into this? And it feels like a lot. And so having something to help me get a little bit more of a perspective on things, I think would be incredibly helpful. And so Thesis here in the chat with the great comment here. You can't earn all the money in the world, but you can earn a lot of health issues chasing them. Work-life balance, or should I say ambition-harmony balance, is hard for a reason. Yeah, I think that's what it is that one of the tricky things about... I see Jacob here in the chat. Oh, no worries at all. Okay, I'm glad, Jacob, that you could hear this piece. It's definitely a part that's near and dear to my heart. And again, whether it's something I build or something I help to create, this is probably one of those focus areas I want to spend a lot of time on, because I think we have technology for a reason. If we can use that in a way to create healthier relationships with the things that we do, the time we spend, and creating like a meaningful impact in a way that's not the typical, like, I want to do more for the sake of doing more, I think that will be pretty big, honestly, I think, for people in general. So courses, don't get me started. Yep. Let's not talk about all the Udemy courses I've purchased for $10. And gosh, even I purchased some of the more expensive ones thinking that would motivate me sometimes. But I get like 10% through, then I'm on to something else for whatever reason. And a lot of books here that I have, the intention of reading, but haven't gotten around to. So it gets tricky. But yes. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about here is, let's see, actually, shoot, we are at time. Gosh, time always tends to fly when I hang out with y'all. All right. But as far as today goes, oh wait, not Build with Ben. That was on Tuesday. We want the Obsidian office hours. All right. So what we've shown here today is we've successfully integrated Obsidian with the official Readwise plugin, which overall was honestly a really great experience. I do love most of it. The only thing that I have kind of a question on at this point is trying to figure out what exactly am I going to do regarding like updated highlights, because as we can see, I was hoping for a little bit more of an instant connection where like if I updated it on the Kindle, it'll automatically go to that and it'll go to that. Doesn't look like is that smooth yet, but honestly, that is an optimization I can live without for now. What I have here is already a pretty big deal. So pretty excited for that. All righty then. Let's switch on over to intermission. Thesis here suggesting using philosophical hours with Ben. Honestly, it's funny. I think Obsidian office hours tends to veer into the philosophy area sometimes, funny enough, due to, I think for me, when it came up on my radar, it felt like a shift towards a software movement that I could really resonate with, as far as privacy being marked down first, and a lot of this, like, there's something that really opened me up, I think, when thinking about things, which is why I'm thinking about other ways I can help to contribute to this, I'll call it movement, that I'd love to see going forward. But that said, I do think going forward, we should probably consider at some point breaking up just like a pairing session where I can just sort of work on something more generic, and then we can talk philosophy things, topics, because fun fact, for those who don't know, I nearly double majored with philosophy. It was definitely one of those things I really strongly considered at one point. Really enjoyed taking those courses in college and just getting into the nuances of the fact that a lot of times things are not black and white. There are multiple perspectives, and learning to evaluate the trade-offs between those, I think, is the key to navigating a lot of the major decisions in life. So with that said, as far as streaming schedule, so next week I won't be streaming, but I will be back the following week. But that said, I'm actually excited. So in lieu of streaming, I'm going to be double publishing episodes on YouTube, so I can start getting some of the past episodes back up, as well as getting more content up on the YouTube channel. So thesis here. I love the honesty. It's even more interesting to me when we derail like that. Obsidian comes second. Sorry. Well, then, you know what, thesis? I mean, for now, I think I'm just going to keep at it, because while I would love to add a third streaming session, I have to be realistic with myself in that I'm still don't have a good infrastructure for supporting the two I have, because Oh, actually, it's getting better now, but I want to get the publishing cycle getting a lot better, resources in a way that people can access it afterwards. So I think we'll keep Obsidian office hours a way to, but again, I think it works well because Obsidian is about facilitating thinking. So we can derail all we want. And what I should really do though, actually next time is I should probably be taking notes in Obsidian as we talk so that I can maintain those connections and those ideas, because these are certainly things that I'll be developing over time, that's for sure. All right, so with that said, I really appreciate you all hanging out with me today. It's been fun, and again, the questions in the chat are always welcome, and more importantly, as you have ideas or commentary, please, like, I appreciate like a good challenge, and if you got a debate or a concern regarding something I've said, I'd love to hear it, because to Adam Grant's point from oh gosh, I forgot the book already, Think Again, like honestly, I have no interest in being wrong longer than I have to. So if you have counterpoints, ideas that can help me, honestly, I'm more than happy to. If there's anything I pride myself in, is that I am not afraid to admit I'm wrong, because what's the joy in being, where's the fun in being wrong? So with that said, again, it's been an absolute pleasure, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.